Hi, so today I wanted to talk a little bit about this coronavirus, COVID-19, and the Dharma, what role the Dharma can play in helping us get over this problem that we're going to be stuck with for several months ahead of us. I'm Doug Smith of the Online Dharma Institute, that's onlinedharma.org. If you're new to this channel and interested in living a wiser and a kinder and a calmer life, consider subscribing to this channel and click the bell down below if you want to receive notifications when I come out with new videos. So in today's video, I'm actually going to be discussing the role of kindness and wisdom and calm in our lives, and how those three elements can help us to make this period ahead of us better. This talk is going to be a little more informal than my normal talks. I've got some notes that I want to rely upon, just a few things that I want to get across, because I think it's important for us, with the difficulties that are going to be coming up ahead, to keep in mind the Dharma and the role that the Dharma can play in our lives and make our lives easier, especially during difficult times. I know that many of you are going to be distracted with ordinary things in your life, a changing in work, perhaps people that you know getting sick or yourself getting sick. That's absolutely normal. It's what happens to all of us. But what I would like to do is to provide some of these teachings from the Dharma, different aspects of the Dharma going forward. I'll intersperse these with more normal teachings on just other elements of the Dharma, because I think we need both in our lives, just sort of a normal Dharma teachings, as well as ones that are more directed towards issues that are facing us right now. So that's my feeling on what's going forward on this channel for at least the present time period. Let me know what you need, what questions or concerns you have in your lives. Put it down below in the comments section. I always love reading those and hearing about them. They change what I do on this channel, and certainly that goes double and triple in this particular situation. Because I think at this time we do need these fundamental teachings of wisdom. Especially because many of us will become emotionally unmoored at times. Things may seem very difficult. So I put this question to some of my followers over on Patreon and got a few interesting ideas to sort of kick the ball here, get the ball rolling, as it were. One issue from Joey Steele brings up the problem of hoarding that many of us have already seen in our neighborhoods, in our grocery stores, and so on. A lot of it doesn't make much sense to me, why it is that people feel that they have to pile up toilet paper in their houses. That doesn't make much sense to me at all. But this is, I think, a good practice for all of us, because it's an understanding, I think, of more of an altruistic understanding, can help us overcome our own tendencies towards wanting to hoard. I think hoarding is a perfect example of our sort of my-making mind, the I-making and my-making mind that we ordinarily live with, where when we are beset by worries and concerns, the automatic tendency of our mind is to want to grab things for ourselves, to shore up our own feeling of inadequacy under a certain difficult situation by expanding our reach, by grabbing more for ourselves. And that if we can instead foster more of an idea of altruism towards the world and working together with others, which is a theme I'll be coming back to on this video several times, we can help to overcome that tendency in ourselves and perhaps in others. That if we run out of toilet paper, one of our neighbors will be able to help us, a friend will be able to help us, a family member will be able to help us. And that's one of the reasons why it's good to foster these kinds of feelings of kindness towards people around us. And also, Martin Cross talked on Patreon about the ways that we can look to the coronavirus and indeed all of these kind of viruses, in particular pandemics, the flu virus being an example that happens every year, colds, as pointing towards the fact that we aren't isolated in this world, that we're not really truly individuals. Now, we may practice physical isolation in order to break down the tendency of one person catching this virus from another, but we know that physical isolation is really an artificial kind of thing. It's not something that comes naturally to us. And more's the point, it's not a perfect answer. It certainly helps, and that's why we should do it. But the truth is a deeper truth, which is that we are all one here. We all share the same genetic inheritance. We all share the same viral baggage, if you like. We share this with each other. The idea of us being separate, solitary individuals, as the story seems to be in much of the Western world, that we're sort of individuals separated from each other who do things by ourselves. I think in times like this, we can see beyond that and see the problems with that kind of approach. And that really a truer and better approach is one that brings us together and that understands our shared humanity. I think it helps us to get beyond some of our more limited viewpoints. When we're worried and concerned, it can help us to have a touchstone of wisdom, a touchstone of truth, where we can really touch ground, keep our feet grounded, touch ground with our hands. I think here of the very famous earth-touching gesture that we find in early Buddhism that's repeated in many much Buddhist iconography down to the present day, that highlights the way that we can, I think, calm ourselves down by touching ground when things get bad, in a literal sense or in a figurative sense. And here, one of the ways that we can do this is through the general practice of kindness, the practice that's known in Buddhism as the Brahmaviharas, or the divine abodes, 4 different practices, which we can gather together under the umbrella of kindness. That is to say, to be kind to one another, to be compassionate, because as things get bad, we're going to need to be compassionate to ourselves at times, compassionate, of course, to others, compassionate to others in need who are sick or hurting, who may have lost jobs, lost their livelihood, maybe losing friends or family. This is something that we have to find in ourselves and find in others, and as I say, practice. Another practice of the Brahmaviharas is a practice of sympathetic joy. That is to say, to be joyful with those who are able to get through this relatively unscathed, to share in their happiness, to be able to approach their well-being without becoming crabbed about it and nasty about it, to understand that some people are going to do better than others in this kind of circumstance. And the 4th practice of the Brahmaviharas is the practice of equanimity, to be able to hold the different, as they called, worldly winds, without becoming too unmoored by them. So some of us will be healthy, others of us will be sick, some of us will be in pain, others of us will not be in pain. All kinds of worldly successes and failures fall upon us indiscriminately, and indeed may fall on us one day and then the reverse the next. And so part of the most basic part, I think, an aim of Buddhist practice is to be able to hold these all with equanimity. Now, so this is the practice of the 4 Brahmaviharas, which I would put under kindness in general, kindness to ourselves and others. Now, there's 2 ways, I think, of approaching this practice of kindness. One is to think of them as a kind of a stance that we take, that we agree that people should be kind, that we agree that people should be compassionate, and so on. That we make a decision, and we think of it as a decision that we've made, sort of something that we have ticked the box and said, yes, I'm going to do these things. That's probably not going to be the most helpful. The second way of approaching this is not so much as a stance that we take, but as a practice that we do. So we're not taking them as a stance, I think. At least we're taking them as a stance, but we're seeing that we're going to be imperfect. We're going to slip up. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to find ourselves at times not being as kind as we might like. We're going to find ourselves perhaps short on compassion. We're certainly going to find ourselves less than fully equanimous with the state of the world. That's absolutely normal. But if we come at these as practices rather than as stances, if we come at them as practices, then I think we'll come at them to see that they're things that will stick with us, that we don't become perfect at in a day, but that we see that we'll try to become better at them as time goes on. And I think that's the healthier way to look at how we should approach these problems that we're going to be beset with in the coming weeks and months. The second issue, I think, the second approach that we can take is an approach of wisdom, which in this circumstance, I think most importantly perhaps, involves finding good sources of information and not distributing rumors that are ill-founded. And this is something that I think we can all learn from. It's something that will, if we learn the skills of doing this properly, this will stand us in good stead even after this virus has long gone. So I'll put a link to the World Health Organization site down in the show notes in case you would like to read their input on the coronavirus and what we should be doing and what we should believe about this. I'm sure that website will change from day to day and week to week. But in general, if you find information that's either too good to be true or too bad to be true, that you check other places, that you try to confirm that the information you've received from other sites that are perhaps more credible, and that if you can't confirm it, that you don't share it. We all, again, will slip up from time to time because this is also a practice. However, I think it's a good place to start, and that's one of the ways that we can practice safety in this coming coronavirus problem, or that's already upon us. Now, of course, some of us will know things to do, such as physical isolation from one another, as much as we can practice that, such as washing our hands for a long enough time when we get in a place that's clean again. Let's say we get home again. Such as not touching our face. I did a recent video about that. I'll put a link to it down below. These kinds of practices and other similar ones are, I think, the elements of wise action. And for deeper sources of wisdom, the idea that all things change, I think, is something that we should definitely hold in mind. Now, of course, we know that 4 or 5 months ago, everything seemed relatively rosy. Seemed, of course, and relatively rosy. But now things have changed, and for the next several weeks and months, things may be very difficult. But we have to keep in mind that this too shall pass, that we will overcome this, that we will get beyond it, that things will be better on the other side. And this is something that can, again, keep us in good stead in our lives, in our daily lives generally, is to see change in all things, and to be to practice ways to become aware of this and equanimous with it. As well, we can say it's hard not to cling to the past. It's hard not to cling to things that we may have lost, or that jobs that we may have lost, opportunities that we may have lost, perhaps even friends and family who we may have lost. But the practice of non-attachment, of letting go of such things, is a difficult practice. However, it's one that will release such a burden from us if we're able to get through it, that I think it's worth making the attempt, and worth continuing to attempt it over time, to deepen our practice of non-attachment, because it will make equanimity so much easier to attain. I'll put a link to some videos I have on non-attachment down below in the show notes. It's also wise to use these kinds of terrible occurrences to help us get out of our ordinary me mind, this I and me as a separate being, and instead to understand that a pandemic like this is a worldwide phenomenon. It's one that we all undergo together. And as such, it's one that can get us out of our more restricted kind of ordinary thinking and into a wiser and, in the longer term, a more helpful kind of mindset where we understand the interrelatedness of all things, the interrelatedness that we share with others. That, I think, is also a very bedrock kind of wise teaching. And finally, I think it's extremely important, as now we've discussed kindness and wisdom, it's also important to discuss calm. That is to say, a practice, an ongoing practice of meditation, if we have time for it. Every day, again, if we have time for it every day, 15 minutes, a half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever we find beneficial, that is to say, whatever we have time for that we find beneficial, it can be of great help to us in difficult times like these, because a practice of meditation, mindfulness meditation in particular, following the breath meditation, perhaps body scan meditation, other meditations, such as ones I've discussed on this channel, or you can find other places. These can help us remain calm. And calm is so important for so many different reasons. First of all, it reduces stress. It is almost by definition a kind of reduction in stress, which can help our immune system, as I've discussed in prior videos, but also it can help us have a clearer view of the world, a clearer view of what we need to do in our lives, a clearer view of how we should behave properly, a clearer view of whether we should be washing our hands right now, something very simple. So a regular practice of calm, of meditation, I think is or can be a great benefit to us in difficult times like these. And going forward, I think what we can all do is to start practicing more of the Brahmaviharas, of these divine abodes of kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. I did earlier videos on these. I will put a link to a playlist that I have of these videos up on the screen here, so you can follow them and perhaps practice them in your own lives. If you want to know anything else, if you have any other questions, please do put them down below. Thanks to all of you. Please be well, be healthy, be safe, and I'll catch you on the next video.